Hey everyone, welcome back to Path of Exile, and today we've got a custom create assassin build. Yes, I recently made an assassin, but that one was a bit cursed, so it doesn't really count, okay? Especially seeing as this is a caster build, or something like that, right? But to spice it up, we are only firing a single spell out of the setup, and that spell is good old Wave of Conviction. However, there is a bit more to this character that I wanna talk about as the video progresses, which is why I'm gonna keep the intro short. So as always, remember to sub if you enjoy the video, otherwise a rating and a comment are always appreciated. And with all of that said, let's build a spin to win character. Okay, so for the skill tree, we're gonna start off with the Ascendancy, and it is an assassin for elusive on crit, power charge generation, power charge crit bonuses, and single target DPS. Simple. The character is a level 95 assassin, and I will advise getting here yes or yes. This is because the build needs everything that I've allocated so far, so no cutting corners this time. We obviously sided with Alira for bandits, and in the realm of pantheons, Solaris and Shakari are the best choices. So now comes the fun part. We are gonna start off by taking attack speed and accuracy, life, crit stuff, damage and life, more life, and the crit chance and accuracy stuff under the life. From there on out, we want the dodge, more crit chance, life, and a jewel socket. Now we are gonna move towards the intelligence side of the skill tree, and we are gonna start off by taking a power charge, elemental focus, life, the jewel socket, and pain attunement. This is because we are gonna use militant faith with High Templar Dominus as the patron of the jewel. This turns any keystone in range, in this case pain attunement, into inner conviction, for the 3% more spell damage per power charge, while also prohibiting any frenzy charge generation. Mandatory items we do not skip. From there on out, we want crit multi, a spell crit, life, a jewel socket, another power charge, more life, a cluster jewel socket, avatar of fire, a spell crit, life, and aura stuff. The tree overall is a bit complex, and believe me, I've tried simplifying it, but this is as self-contained as it's gonna get. Anyways, we've got some cluster jewels to talk about. The first one is an 8 passive large cluster jewel. Remember, nothing more or else we have to overspend points, and that means that we are forced to level even more to allocate this stuff, and we don't wanna do that. The first node is Prismatic Heart for elemental damage and resistances. The second one is Inspired Oppression for some elemental damage, but also to push Widespread Destruction as the node that is not getting allocated. We only spent 5 points on the jewel, getting 2 notables and the cluster jewel sockets. The first medium cluster jewel has 5 passives at most, or else we overspend points and we are forced to overlevel, which is not a good thing. So for the actual notables, it has Precise Focus for crit chance and crit multi while channeling. And this is a global modifier, so it affects everything while we are channeling a skill, in this case Cyclone. The other one is Unwavering Focus for that 40% chance to avoid being stunned while channeling. And the other medium cluster is special because it is a Megalomaniac with Unwavering Focus, Natural Vigor, and Surging Vitality. In your case, getting something like this is gonna be close to impossible. However, I will recommend searching for Unwavering Focus on a Megalomaniac and then looking for notables that give you maximum life or damage in your search. This way you can get something similar to mine. Otherwise, a rare cluster jewel just like the other one is perfectly fine. Having said that, alongside Phantasmal Cyclone, we sit at 100% chance to avoid being stunned while channeling Cyclone, which is why those mods are mandatory on the clusters. Anyways, for regular jewels, we've got a Watcher's Eye with attack speed while affected by precision, and elemental penetration on crit while affected by zealotry. The attack speed modifier is mandatory, but the other mod can be crit chance on consecrated ground, or extra damage against enemies on consecrated ground while affected by zealotry. One of the rare jewels has increased life, crit multi, accuracy, and crit chance. The other one has life, fire resistance, attack speed, and fire penetration as a corruption. In your case, I'd suggest that you get anything that you may be lacking in the jewels, to keep the rest of the gear cheap. Otherwise, life and DPS stuff is just fine. So that's it for the skill tree, so now let us move on to the turbo fun stuff, the gear. Actually, we are not gonna talk about the gear just yet because there is an intermediate topic, which is the cast on crit thresholds. So pull out a notebook and a pen because we are getting educational now. Cast on crit is a mechanic that is dependent on accuracy, crit chance, and attack speed. We obviously want to cap accuracy, so that we are hitting every single swipe of our sword while cycloning. Just a tiny bit under the cap is gonna make this feel completely unplayable. This is why you want accuracy everywhere you can fit it, alongside the stuff on the tree and precision. At the same time, the more crit chance you've got, the more frequent you'll fire spells. The closer to 100% crit chance, the better this build is gonna feel. which is why we are using things like Precision, crit chance on the skill tree, the Assassin Ascendancy, Consecrated Ground, etc. However, we also gonna pay attention to the attack speed of Cyclone, for you see, Cast on Crit has an internal cooldown. Generally speaking, this cooldown translates to 150 milliseconds or roughly 6 casts per second. Without any cooldown recovery rate on the gear, you cannot go over this threshold. So this translates into getting as close to 6 attacks per second and not over it, in order to be able to fire 6 spells per second. Going over the threshold causes you to skip casts, effectively breaking your DPS output. But for this character we are using cooldown recovery on the boots. And in order to bypass that threshold for a bit more attack speed, we need at least 14% cooldown recovery rate. This is important because by having at least 14% cooldown recovery rate, we are allowed to push the attack speed to roughly 7.5 attacks per second, allowing us to fire at least 7 spells per second, which will allow us to do a bit more damage. However, this is also important because it is relatively easy to forget that threshold and accidentally get more attack speed than needed. Now, this entire topic changes a bit if we were to fire 2 or more spells in the cast and crit setup, but this character only uses 1 spell and he sits at roughly 7.29 attack speed while fully buffed. So with this knowledge, let's actually talk about the gear. However, I need you to prioritize strength on some of these gear pieces. The character needs at least 126 strength. Wherever you can get it, it's great, and the more you can get, the easier it is gonna be to cover the rest of your gear needs. Anyways, the first thing that we are covering is the weapon. A two-handed sword with crit multi as the implicit, with socketed gems are supported by level 20 cast on critical strike. Mine also has attack speed naturally, so I multi-modded plus 2 levels of socketed support gems and crit chance. In your case, whatever the sword didn't roll naturally, you must craft into it. Optimally speaking, plus 1 level of socketed gems instead of Fizz's extra fire is way better, as that is going to allow you to deal a crap ton of damage. But the physical as extra fire is just fine. Also, if you can craft spell damage alongside the support gem levels, that will be fine as well. The sword is the backbone of the character, so no cutting corners here. The helmet is a crown of the inward eye with consecrated ground from Holy Flame Totem, applies 9% increased damage taken to enemies. If you cannot find that enchantment, Wave of Conviction damage or Wave of Conviction exposure are fine as well. For the body armor, we are gonna have to Awakener Slam 2 body armors. Explodey chest and a chest with attacks have extra crit chance. Hopefully yours doesn't break and you can get a life and a resist. The base of the chest is not that important, but we do require 2 blues, 2 reds and a green socket. Both mods are mandatory though, to maintain a high crit chance and also to detonate enemies as they die. One of the rings has flame ability on hit as the implicit, and I crafted it by spamming essences of hysteria until I hit the roll you see on screen. Strength, a resist, the Fizz's extra fire, and I crafted life on it. Optimally, if you can craft a frenzy charge that will be better, but try to get something like mine. The belt is a Stygian Vice with life, resistances, and we need to slam a Warlord Exalt for the fire damage against the burning enemies, or increased fire damage or increased global damage. Either of those 3 is fine. The jewel on the belt has life, global crit multi, resistances, and any other DPS you can cram into it. Now, for the following 4 pieces of gear, I am prioritizing something new to the channel: Elemental Ailment Avoidance. So for the gloves I've got life, accuracy, a resist, spell damage, and I bench crafted Elemental Ailment Avoidance. One of the rings has Elemental Ailment Avoidance as the implicit, and I crafted it with essences of hysteria until I got life and a resistance. Optimally 2 resistances or strength. Either way, we need to craft a frenzy on it. The amulet has life, crit multi, fire resistance and fire damage leached as life, and I bench crafted a frenzy charge. We also anoint thick skin for some additional life and elemental ailment avoidance, and the boots have life, a resist, movement speed and both elemental ailment avoidance and 15% cooldown recovery rate. I also enchanted them with elemental penetration. Alongside elemental focus on the tree, the character cannot be ignited, chilled or shocked. I did this on purpose because I feel like these 3 are becoming way too common, especially shock, and in a character that is not spongy, that can lead to annoying deaths. If you can do the same thing, I will 100% recommend it. Otherwise, you could ditch these elemental ailment avoidance mods for more life, damage, resistances, attributes, etc. It's up to you. Also, as I explained earlier, the cooldown recovery rate is mandatory, especially to have at least 14% cooldown recovery rate to be able to push the attack speed above 6 attacks per second, so don't forget that. Finally, the flasks are a diamond, a white soak and a sulfur flask. And now we are gonna wrap up the build stuff with the gem setups. In the weapon, Phantasmal Cyclone and Wave of Conviction, linked to Awakened added fire damage, Empower level 4, Combustion and Anomalous Inspiration. Remember that Cast on Crit is here intrinsically. In the body armor, Herald of Ash, Zealotry, Herald of Purity and Precision, linked to an Enlightened level 3, optimally level 4. In the helmet, Holy Flame Totem linked to multiple totems. In the gloves, Withering Step and Flame Dash linked to Second Wind and a low level Arcane Surge. In the boots, Vaal Righteous Fire linked to increased duration. Also Infernal Cry and a Portal Gem, though Infernal Cry barely sees any use, so you can ditch it if you want to. And with all of that said, let's quickly wrap up this adventure, mainly because the video is already rather long. And I say this all the time nowadays, but this build is no exception. A month ago this character would have been infinitely cheaper and maybe a bit more powerful. This is thanks to gear that is no longer on trade because people have left, so in a sense the rather elevated cost could be avoided. Now, I know that I ramped the cost of the character by choosing to invest into elemental ailment avoidance. To be honest, I feel like things like shock have become a common annoyance inflicted by monsters nowadays, so I felt like building towards avoiding that crap completely. You can skip it if you want to, but I will advise not doing it, because it feels good to not be flask dependent to remove ailments. But I leave that choice to you. Finally, do not sleep on the attack speed. It is a fundamental mechanic in the character, and ignoring the advice I gave you or the mechanic as a whole can and will get you into trouble, especially seeing as it allows the build to dish out a bit more damage. But yeah, the character works as fine as you'd expect. It was a ton of fun to play with and I recommend giving it a shot. And with that said, I'm out. Thank you so much for watching today's content, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you again soon with more content. Take care, have a nice start to your week, and peace out.
Persevere. Too much hinges on this.
Feed! Your faith was a veil for your base desires. Hypocrite. You're lucky your soul isn't going to your gods. Give your soul to me. Arise, my children. Cause will destroy you.
My cause fuels me.
Feed. You were a potent soldier, Camarilla, but our cause was never your cause. For your service, I give you what you never gave your victims: a quick death. Don't do this, Exile.
What's this? A real challenge? You've finally caught my attention. Die.
Watch guilty crumble! Fury of the cosmos! Wow.
The others found strength in their projections. They became reliant on them. I am not so foolish. Die.
Just need a moment to catch my breath.
Be silent.
I have seen beyond.
Die.
This Humanity is nothing! You are nothing! Rain of stars!
Is life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain? Die.
This is gold!
Die. Die.
Watch beauty crumble! Be utterly annihilated! Glorious flames!
On the edge of death, my heart races. I am alive.
Everlasting fire!
Meaning
Is an illusion!